I feel like I've already lost this episode. Do you want me to leave? I will. I'll just go. I'll let you guys be.
Brian, you're welcome here. Look,
There was an immediate evolution of the podcast. You guys are going to go talk to dead people.
Michael and I are now hosting. Yeah.
Welcome to the new podcast. Brian, I hate to say, you've officially been phased out. Hello.
Hello.
We're recording. Welcome back to Whyte Noise.
Oh, yes. We have returned.
Ryan, introduce our next guest, and then we're going to just launch in.
So our friend Ashley from last week was like, I know a phenomenal paleontologist that you
Kate.
should speak to.
Kate from last week.
What did I say?
Ashley.
Oh, my God.
We're off to a good start.
We met Kate last week, and she's like, I know an amazing paleontologist I have to meet. So welcome, Ashley Hall. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we were all just getting to know each other, and I was like, wait, I have to hit record. Because real quick recap of everything. You were just telling us about yourself and your history, and if you don't mind doing a quick recap. And
of course, yeah. So I'm Ashley Hall. I'm a paleontologist, educator, and children's book author, and I'm originally from South Bend, Indiana, home of Notre Dame. And I grew up there, and then I went to school at IU Bloomington, which is down in the southern part of the state. And I majored in anthropology and animal behavior. So I have a background in bones and specifically faunal osteology. So fauna meaning animal. And I studied bison bones and lots of other animals that people were eating on the plains about 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. And so, while not directly tied to paleontology, I did study bones, and bones are in every vertebrate. And so, to major in paleontology is not something that's easy. It's very difficult and usually not an undergraduate level thing. I majored in anthropology and then sort of took my career from there. And actually, Montana State University, where I am now, it's one of the only places you can get an undergraduate degree in paleontology.
Oh,
so if you like that, that is definitely a possibility.
Go hang out with Ashley.
Absolutely, yeah. So I graduated in 2007. I moved out to Los Angeles, and I worked at the Los Angeles Zoo in education. That was sort of my foot in the door into paleontology, and not necessarily paleontology at that time, because at that time I was interested more in being a zookeeper, fun fact. Mm-hmm. And so I went out there for an internship to work with the birds. And so I worked with many different birds, like birds of prey, corvids like ravens and crows, and then lots of different like exotic birds like flamingos and toucans and vultures and things.
I've read the book A Bird's Mind. Have you ever read that?
No.
And it talks about how intelligent they are. And
scary intelligent.
Crazy.
Like, never be mean to a bird because they will remember you.
They understand water displacement, and I know a fair amount of human beings who don't. So,
so in any case, I moved out to LA, worked at the LA Zoo, worked in education, so I was teaching zoo camp there. And then I learned that the museum was in town. And at that time, back in 2008, like social media really wasn't a thing. And so I didn't know, that there was a museum and, of course, the La Brea tar pits, which is super famous for animals getting trapped in asphalt there or tar, right? That sticky black stuff. And so I worked both at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles and the world famous La Brea tar pits, where I was giving tours and educational programs and, explaining how paleontology works to the general public. Long story short, I'm in Montana now, but my career has taken many different turns. I was in LA for 9 years. I was in Cleveland for 5 years. And then I've been in Bozeman for 5 years this next month.
Nice. I was going to say, when were you at the La Brea tar pits? So that was 2008 through...
I was there, the zoo was 2007. 2008 was the Natural History Museum and the tar pits.
Uh-huh.
And then I left in 2015.
Okay, so I lived in LA for a while, and I lived in Park La Brea, which is that like housing development right next to the La Brea tar pits starting in 2009, off and on for a few years. And I walked through, my Starbucks was on the other side of the tar pits. And every day, and so was my gym, I would walk through the tar pits and I'd go to the gym, and then I'd treat myself to my green iced tea at the Starbucks. And I would say, I spent so much time there. And it just hit me. I was like, I wonder if we ever passed each other.
Probably.
Because I loved that place. And whenever people came to visit, I'd be like, the first thing we're doing, we're going to walk through the tar pits.
Yeah.
We're going to get coffees. It's like, every time that was my home base.
Oh, I love that. And isn't the smell so good? Do you like the smell?
I weirdly do.
I do too.
Isn't it kind of like fuel?
Kind of. Like if you've just had your driveway redone.
It smells like hot asphalt because it is.
Yeah. I didn't actually think about it as being hot asphalt, but yeah. And so it's also like, it's beautiful, the park, but at the same time, some of the sculptures are kind of disturbing. So they've like sculptured animals like screaming and dying in the tar pits. It's so morbid. There's like a baby woolly mammoth, as I recall, or some sort of woolly mammoth. Yeah, that's like trapped in the tar with like a little, sign on the side where it's like, what you see depicted here is a mammoth in its last moments.
Like,
and you're
this
just
for
like,
real
oh my
happened.
God.
Yeah.
It's just like, what a pleasant park of death.
And that's one of the most interesting things about paleontology is we're so crazy because all paleontologists, like, we think, baby fossils are cute. We're like, oh my God, look at the little baby. And everyone's like, it's like dead though. We're like, yeah, but like, we wouldn't know about it if it hadn't died.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like some of the people in Pompeii that were like curled up and you're like, isn't that sweet? And then it's like, wait.
You know what though? It goes well with my other interests though, because I'm kind of a morbid girly.
Same.
All things like death culture, and I just think it's fascinating. And so it kind of wraps in with my love of paleo.
I'm with you on that. Wait, what do you mean when you say death culture? I'm so intrigued now. Because also you as a person, like, again, this is a podcast, it's not video, but like you are like a sunshine personified type person. You're so pretty and you have like really like light blonde hair that's in this really cool pixie cut with like fierce eyeliner. Like you are
I have a little bob. I have it like tucked up in the back.
I was gonna say, I thought maybe you had like a ponytail back there. I wasn't sure.
I have been known for having I have a platinum bob, so I'm actually like growing it out a little bit, but you're spot on. No, I'm like I'm a goth girl, but I'm like, I don't know how to be because I'm also a Swiftie. And so it's just very confusing. I'm a very positive, happy person, but I also love cemeteries. Like that's my favorite place to just like go and spend time.
Same. I love a cemetery. They're really relaxing. There was one behind where I went to grad school. That's where I used to go eat my lunch every day. Everyone else thought it was creepy. I went to school in London, and there was like a really old one of those ones where most of hundreds and hundreds of year old, where a lot of the headstones are like half sunken into the ground. I would go and just like hang out with pick a person and be like, we're having lunch today.
Yes. Oh my God. Wait, can we start a podcast? Wait, I think we just became best friends and also started a podcast.
Great.
I think we should have conversations with like dead people.
I know people who do that on the streets of New York City.
Oh my God, Sam.
How do you guys feel? So I love the smell of boxwoods.
Oh, that is gross.
Oh, so that's so interesting. That's actually the one thing that I like. When you go to a cemetery, there's always lots of boxwoods. And when they're freshly cut, that smell is very pleasant for me. But apparently that's a genetic thing. It's like cilantro.
It smells. So I hate cilantro because of genetics.
Same.
So you probably hate boxwoods because of genetics then?
Yes.
Because they smell like pee-pee to some people.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
We had them around my house, and my dad always thought that it smelled like a cat peed in the bushes.
Interesting. I don't know if I have ever noticed. So maybe I don't have an issue with that. I know those trees in summer that smell like semen.
Yeah.
You notice those that are so pretty, the cum trees.
Bradford pear, invasive species, provide no ecological value whatsoever to our world. Other than where they belong, which is not here.
They're pretty and smelly.
Where are they from?
They're Chinese.
Oh, they are very smelly, but they are very pretty.
Yeah, so in any case, I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk paleontology.
Yes. Thank you for getting us back on track. Thank you for hosting.
I feel like I've already lost this episode. Do you want me to leave? I'll just go. I'll let you guys be.
Brian, you're welcome here. Look.
There was an immediate evolution of the podcast. You guys are going to go talk to dead people.
Michael and I are now hosting. Yeah.
Welcome to the new podcast. Brian, I hate to say, you've officially been phased out.
That's all right.
We had a similar one a while ago where I had a friend on who was our guest. It was a good friend of mine, and it turns out she's from the same town as Ryan. And the two of them just went on and then knew all the same people. And I'm pretty sure I got up, left, cleaned my apartment, came back. They were still going.
Well, look, this is why we have an editor.
That's why we have an editor. You just keep stepping in. This is starting to concern me, Ashley.
All right, shall we get to the meat and potatoes of why we all are here, which is this competition? Ashley, do you know the rules?
No.
Great. So how it works
Wait,
is...
there's rules?
I mean, they're really loose. Ryan and I were each given a topic by last week's judge, so Kate. And we each have 10 minutes to riff on said topic with you. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, you choose a winner, whatever that means to you. There are literally no parameters. It could just be like, Ryan referenced this one thing that I really enjoy, so therefore he wins. Usually it's Ryan actually taught me something and I learned something new. And then you give us our topic for next week.
Perfect.
And it will be whatever pops into your head. There's no pressure. So
you said you kind of indicated that you maybe had a topic earlier. You think you're sticking with that one, or has it evolved? Given
no, I think I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Which one of us would you like to go first?
I think we need Ryan. Ryan's the podcast guest today, so. Ryan,
so nice of you. Such a pleasure to be here, let me tell you.
Joining us from snowy Woodstock, New York. All right, Ryan, your time starts now.
Oh, well, I guess we didn't say the topic is Bone Wars.
Oh, sorry. The topic is Bone Wars.
So I did a deep dive in this, and Michael did text me earlier today, and he was like, so are you going to talk about, is it Cope and Marsh?
Yes.
And I was like, I haven't, at that point, I was like, I haven't done my research yet. But instead, I'm actually going to probably talk mostly about Sue and Stan. Do you know who Sue and Stan are?
Oh, yeah, I do.
It's worth noting Cope and Marsh actually were pretty much the foundation of American paleontology. And while they were at each other's throats, they did kind of drive paleontology in America, and kind of set the way it kind of worked going forward. But that being said, it turns out that modern day Bone Wars revolve heavily around this Black Hills Institute, which is run by this guy named Peter Larson. And they've been behind a number of the major finds in the previous 30, 40 years or so. And they're still around. But they found Stan the T-Rex in 1987, and then they found Sue the T-Rex. Was Sue first or Stan first? I think Sue was in 1990 and Stan was 87. All right, got it right.
Am I allowed to interject, or am I not allowed to?
I'm going to need you to interject a lot with mine.
I'm actually looking to you for confirmation on what I
don't think I should give any clues. Is this like a test?
It can be, but I don't want it to be.
I'm just only harshly judging from this side.
Good. The oddly enough, the two of their biggest finds ended up being sold, and for two very different reasons. So let's see which one's it. So I'll come back to Sue. I'll talk about Stan first. So Peter Larson, who runs BHI, had this brother Neil. And it sounds like, as brothers do, they ultimately ended up fighting and disagreeing about the running of BHI. And they went to dissolve the company, and Neil wanted his equity out of the company. And the only way that they could do that is that they needed to sell assets to do it. So it turns out that they had a fairly good fossil of a T-Rex named Stan that they took to Christie's and sold for almost $32 million. And it went to a private buyer, and for a long time nobody knew where it went. But it turned out that it's popped up, and it's in Abu Dhabi, and it's going to ultimately be in their Natural History Museum there. So I don't know if a private buyer bought it or if their government bought it, but that's kind of what ended up happening. Now, oddly enough, Sue was quite the diva. because her storyline is kind of a shit show. So Peter, the troublemaker at BHI, had paid this guy Maurice $5,000 to excavate on his land and take away whatever he found. But the drama here is that the land wasn't really Maurice's. It was actually part of a United States land trust. And on top of it all, it was on indigenous land as well. So there were potentially indigenous rights to it as well. And there actually, I kind of found through my research that there's a lot, I mean, very fairly, some significant conversations to have around indigenous rights to all of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in some cases, they actually have returned a number of the artifacts back to indigenous cultures. I would tell you countries outside of the United States have been better at it. Shocker. The FBI actually raided and took Sue, and then it became this like giant custody battle. Ultimately, it was determined that it was Maurice's right. Like it was on his land. It was his thing. He had actually paid for excavation. He didn't pay for them to take it away. But as soon as he had the right to sell it, he took it to Sotheby's. It was sold for around $8 million is what I recall. And the Field Museum in Chicago bought it. But that was actually it was purchased with Big Mac money, McDonald's and Dole Whip money. Disney were the primary contributors to buy it for the Field Museum in Chicago.
Yep. And when you go there, you can see the lab and it says the McDonald's laboratory.
Oh.
Yeah, so they bought it and donated it.
I'm loving it.
I'm loving it. Sue,
and that's how you'll win, right?
So I didn't know this, but Sue, the T-Rex, is also a queer icon.
Yes.
Wait, really?
Yes.
So I was actually going to correct you, but I wanted you to keep going because I felt like you might get there, and you did. So Sue came out as they, them, on Twitter, formerly Twitter, now X, but, because we don't know the actual gender of the dinosaur.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, Sue.
It was assumed that because of the size of, I don't know what the bone is, but the one where the legs connect, that it was smaller. And it was an assumption that she was a female.
Yeah. So in paleontology, when we're looking to like gender a dinosaur, really is sex, right? It's sexing a dinosaur. Gender is so broad. And dinosaurs, we don't know what gender they wanted to be. So Sue has not successfully been sexed. There is a very specific way that we have to sex a dinosaur, and it has to do with their leg bones. Like mammals. So mammals have, antlers, and some, females don't, males do. There's very specific ways that they show their male or female, right? With birds, it's a little more difficult because they actually have, more of an external looking, display of their sex. So like with mallard ducks, right? Ducks have super bright colors if they're male and super drab colors if they're female, because the females sit on the nests and the males are the ones who are competing over the females. So that's
we're out doing drag.
Dimorphism. Yeah. And so with dinosaurs, because we don't have any of the plumage anymore, and they are the closest thing to birds. Birds today are modern day dinosaurs. We call them avian dinosaurs. And we just don't have the external portions of dinosaurs to figure that out. However, birds, when they're egg laying, right? So when they bred and it's their time to lay eggs, females have to eat more calcium, and they store that calcium in a tissue called medullary tissue, and it resides within their long bones in their legs. And so, that way it doesn't strip their bones of calcium. They have extra calcium reserves for laying eggs because eggs are made of calcium carbonate. With one dinosaur, actually, this is so fun you're talking about this. We have one dinosaur here at Museum of the Rockies called B. rex. And B. rex is actually the very first sexed dinosaur.
Wow.
So we know that she was female because she had that tissue within her long bones. So Sue is they, them. We do not know, so we should not give her a gender. But I love saying she because, you really don't get that many dinosaurs that are girls. Usually people will say like, oh, like he's really big or he's really scary, because dinosaurs have always sort of been like a symbol of like masculinity or something because they're scary. I don't know how that works, but
Yeah.
but we don't think of dinosaurs necessarily as girls. People always are like, oh, he's so cool. So when Sue came out, that was pretty neat because Sue is named after Sue Hendrickson, which is the discoverer of the T-Rex.
Oh, okay. I was wondering how she got the name Sue.
Yeah.
It was kind of random.
Yeah.
But if Sue came out as, it would be interesting if we found out, you know, down the line, if Sue was a boy, it would be a boy named Sue, like Johnny Cash. So.
Well, and also I found, hopefully you'll confirm this, but like she was pretty fierce, and I'm going to go with the she under the kind of queer methodology here, but she was pretty fierce, like a drag queen would be, because she was a survivor. She was apparently pretty, like the bones indicated that she was pretty screwed up.
Extremely. Mm-hmm.
Like she had broken ribs, she had a messed up arm, and a whole bunch of stuff, but like she's fierce, she's a survivor. She like marched on. And
the other thing too, it's I said it's funny we're talking about like male versus female dinosaurs here, because we have the very first sexed T-Rex and really sexed dinosaur here upstairs in the gallery. And we also right now have the Sue the T-Rex traveling exhibit. It's called the Sue the T-Rex Experience. Sue is literally upstairs.
What?
Yeah.
Ryan, well done.
So I can't believe you
Sue?
pivoted, because this is like kismet. Like we were supposed to do this podcast together.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm happy to send some pictures to you afterwards if you put like
please
from the show notes or something.
Is Sue texting? Texting, tweeting.
So Sue has social media, so you can follow the Field Museum's account, and then Sue has their own account on X, and but the whole skeleton is upstairs. It's the cast of the skeleton, because the original skeleton is at the Field Museum in Chicago. And so it's really neat because we're able to have the whole skeleton upstairs. It actually highlights through sort of like visual lights and sound, like what bones were injured, and kind of like shows them as it's talking. And so it walks you through all the pathologies, is what they're called. So the injuries on the bones. It also came with a Triceratops skeleton that's up there with her, and a bunch of other microfossils that indicated like what the environment was like. And then there's a hilarious video that came with it. And the video shows like a day in the life of Sue. And there's a hilarious one where Sue is walking and just like meandering along like a riverbed, just like, you know, chilling out, just having a day. And there's a dead ankylosaur, one of the big armored dinosaurs, on the beach. And Sue walks over to it and just like, and just like takes a bite, swallows it, and then just like walks around, and then just like stops and then takes the biggest shit.
Why? Who made this video?
I mean, hey, everyone likes poop, so...
I was going to say, it is a unifying concept.
Well, Ryan, not to steal your thunder, but continue on.
No, that was great. How much do I have time left?
Oh, way over time, but that's okay. I was enjoying that immensely.
I'd layered on some extra things in case I had more time, or I had time, but I was going to talk about the fact that getting dinosaur fossils is literally like a 1 in a million chance. It's very, very rare that you get all of the things that need to happen for it to happen.
Yes. And I will say there is huge controversy on the buying and selling of fossils. It is a huge issue in paleontology. And it did unfortunately start with Sue. Because then people started to wonder like, oh, well, maybe I can go out, find dinosaur fossils and sell them. And so now there's a whole black market fossil basically ring, and some of it, you know, like you can find like websites that'll sell teeth and things for less than millions of dollars, but the things that go to auction really hurt the science of paleontology, because, you know, people are seeing them as monetary value and not as scientific or learning value. And, you know, fossils don't come out of the ground with a price tag on them. We give them value. So, but the real value is, you know, what they can contribute to our knowledge of the natural world, because, you know, these animals are not being produced anymore. So everything we have in the ground is finite. They're finite resources. So At every museum I've worked at, we've had a dig program, and the dig programs are awesome because for less than $8 million, for what Sue went for, you can actually fund like an entire paleontology program for like a decade. It's like for the sale of one T-Rex would put a museum in a really good place for scientific research for like years to come. And so I have really strong feelings about the commercial trade. Vertebrate fossils especially are seen as like, the highest monetary value, dinosaurs, of course. And it's also led to a lot of headhunting where people will go, for example, in Mongolia or other areas of the world, and they will go and specifically only look for heads, and then they will destroy the site and leave all the other bones behind.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so you'll see these sites sometimes when we go out in the field that are just destroyed. And you're like, oh, someone's been here and they found something good and they just left garbage behind. So it's pretty gnarly.
Who knew it was such a cutthroat industry?
It is, yeah.
All right, Orion, shall we?
Yes.
I guess I'll give this a whirl.
Yeah!
Ready, set, go.
Okay, so the original Bone Wars. So I was looking, I was like, what are the Bone Wars? And obviously when you Google it, the original Bone War, which again, the extremely immature part of my brain needed to have a solid giggle before I started looking at anything real. But then I learned about as you referenced, the fathers of paleontology, our two friends, Edward Drinker Cope, right? And who's our other friend here? Marsh.
Othniel
O.C.
Charles Marsh.
Othniel Charles Marsh.
Very stately.
I love the name Othniel.
It's coming back.
It's on the rise.
Two babies last year were named Othniel.
Are you kidding me?
No, I just...
I was like, what?
I wish. Oh, and when you look up Othniel, he looks like an Othniel.
Oh, he does.
He kind of looks like a potato, but like an old potato that's been sitting for a while.
100%.
Where it's like instead of like the roots coming down, it's like this big kind of bushy beard situation, these little squinty eyes. He literally just looks like a really old potato is our Othniel.
Don't you think like Cope is kind of like he could get it?
Cope is kind of a stud on the other side, which I get why Marsh was, maybe that's the root of it. So I was reading about them. So Marsh was born
Ryan's looking up Cope to see what he looks like.
Oh, I'm like, I gotta see this.
Guy. So Marsh was born in 1831. Cope was born 7 years later. So they're both, born before the Civil War. I think Marsh is an interesting history where he was born in on a small farm in New York and didn't have much. His mother died young. His father tried to start a lot of businesses. None of them went well. The father didn't do so well. Luckily, he had an uncle Warbucks, also known as George Peabody, who is the P of J.P. Morgan. And obviously, George Peabody did okay. And became the philanthropist of like the daddy of philanthropy. And luckily, Marsh was one of the things that he was like, I shall invest in you. So even though Marsh's father really wanted him to stay and take over the farm, he was like, Dad, you're a loser. I'm going to go with my uncle, who's super rich and is basically paid for Yale at this point, was like installed a museum at Yale. And at that point, I guess there was no paleontology wasn't a thing. But Marsh showed, he was an interest in science at a very young age, and his uncle took an interest. So he paid for his studies. He ended up going to school in Germany, which is then where he met Cope, because they both were studying in Germany / dodging the Civil War. Like, and the more I read about them, it's really, that's kind of how it went. Because then like Cope also, so he was born to a wealthy family in Pennsylvania who also, they wanted him to go into the family business, but they also took him to, they made the mistake of taking him to cool natural history museums. And he got really into that. So both of them were studying in Germany at the same time / dodging the Civil War. And they sort of hung out their studying, luckily, until magically the war was over. And then they were like, great, I finished my studies. I can come home now. And they kind of became friends. I guess when you look at the correspondence, Cope liked Marsh a lot more than Marsh liked Cope, I believe. Like, Cope was like, he's a great guy. And Marsh was like, he's tolerable. Like, but then again, everything I've read about Marsh, he was kind of like a jerk anyway. Like, nobody seemed to like him very much. Like, he was cold. He was distant.
Can I just say, the quote I got back that he's the Regina George of fossils.
He kind of is. And he's such a shady bitch. Like, he is the root, because I think they probably would have been great buddies had Marsh not been super shady. Mm-hmm. So Cope came back. I think what I gather is they're like Elphaba and Glinda, right?
Yes.
Like, Cope kind of was Elphaba. He was the one who wasn't a good people person, but he genuinely was super smart and worked really hard and had a real passion for this. And Marsh was like Glinda. He was really good at spinning the media and riding other people's coattails and was like kind of smart. So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. But he, so anyway, so they come back. Cope ends up working in New Jersey, and where they have, this huge dig, and he invites, as a reciprocal gesture, invites Marsh along at some point to study. And Cope was working with his mentor, Lydell? And he was like, thank you. So they were working in New Jersey. They found this dig, and Cope invited Marsh along. He was like, come look at these dinosaurs we found. And it seemed pretty copacetic there for a while. And then they all left. And Cope, before he went back to keep digging and finding fossils, Marsh snuck back and he bribed the owner of the quarry to then give him any fossils that were found. So then Cope goes back and Marsh had all the fossils, kind of stole things from under his, from behind his back, so shady move number one. Really, that should have done it. But again, Cope is not a horrible guy. But they did sort of passive-aggressive stuff after that, right?
They should have teamed up when really they didn't.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because they both had a lot of resources and they both were equally smart. And they seemed to be the two that were really leading the charge on this, on paleontology in general, when it was just a baby budding field.
Yeah.
But instead, they turn on each other because Marsh did dumb things like steal fossils from Cope. Go behind his back to bribe people to get fossils. And poor Cope's just like, yeah. And then poor sweet Cope, I think another downfall for him was he tended to rush things, right?
Poor hot Cope.
So,
hot Cope, I know.
Oh, I did. I get some.
He has the cool hipster mustache that people try to have right now.
Yes. And I feel like he would be, do you guys follow, there's an Instagram account that's hot Victorian men?
Of course.
Do you really?
Yes, I know exactly the account you're talking about.
Oh my God, so he should be on that.
And I think he probably has been on that.
No, it's my daguerreotype boyfriend.
Oh, there's another one then. I think that's just called Hotties of the Victorian Era or something like that.
Yeah.
He 1,000. So anyway, so Cope, he would be on there. So handsome Cope, sweet handsome Cope, finds so actually, in the meantime, too, they've found things and they've named things after each other. And I found one person who said it was out of them being friendly, oh, look at this cool discovery. I'm going to name it after my friend. But then when you look at what they were, one was a really fierce serpent, and Cope was I'm going to name it after Marsh. And it's so he's essentially calling him a snake. And Marsh named Cope after this little salamander thing. And he was just yeah, you're basically a little worm. I think it was actually really passive aggressive naming. I think it was just really intellectual passive aggressiveness.
It's how to be catty back in the Victorian era.
Basically, I'm going to have this really long Latin name that the root of it is you.
Yeah.
So then Sweet Cope discovers a creature and he's putting it together, right? And and unfortunately, he puts the head on the tail. And again, because he's rushing. And so you have it right there. What's the name of that dinosaur again?
So this is a plesiosaur. It's a Lasmosaurus.
The Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah,
it actually does look like the Loch Ness Monster. Mm-hmm. So he wrote this whole thing in the American Philosophical Society, and he presented it. And of course, he put the head on the tail instead of on the neck. And so I have a feeling everybody there was ooh, he got it wrong. But then Marsh was the one to point it out.
Yeah.
And then Marsh very publicly pointed out his blunder. And then he wouldn't let Cope live it down for basically the rest of their careers, that Cope made this big error where he put the head on the butt. He was the biggest butthead in paleontology at the moment.
It's such an interesting time in paleontology because our knowledge of things now is so much better because it's hindsight, right? So hindsight's 2020. You're yeah, why did they do that? But you look at the skeleton and you've never seen an animal with a neck that long. So why would you think it would be,
And how would everybody else there? Because I did read that it was an awkward moment because it wasn't just Marsh, like a lot of them there noticed it pretty quickly that the head was on the tail. How would you even know though? Like just by looking at it, like they said just by looking at it, they knew.
Yeah.
And that they said he was just rushing to get it done.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And they, they had knowledge of anatomy. And so when you look at backbones, like vertebrae, they go a certain way. Like if you put them back, so it was definitely a rush job.
And so then, bless his heart, like he went out and he tried to buy every copy of the magazine to be like, no. And he obviously didn't buy enough because a lot of them were still out there. So yeah. And from then on, they were, quote, bitter enemies.
Yeah, because he was a bitch.
Yeah, because Marsh was such a bitch. So then after that, then they went off to the Midwest and the two of them, I mean, it's almost good and bad that they were rivals, right? Because then it became this race to see who could find the most and coolest, the mostest and bestest fossils in America. And they each had their teams. And actually, thanks to their feud, we found hundreds of fossils because the two of them were basically constantly racing each other to find as many as possible. And they took paleontology to a giant leap. Oh, sorry. The 10 minutes. So I was just talking about some of the catty things they did. So Marsh sent spies into Cope's team.
Yeah.
That would like report back and purposely sabotage some of his digs.
So messed up.
And like write back to Marsh and tell him what they were finding.
Yeah.
And then Cope would do things like he would take detailed notes of everything Marsh did wrong. Like every time Marsh screwed up, Cope like kept very detailed notes about it. But a really messed up thing they did, which is a really sad thing, is if one like ran out of funding while still on a dig and he knew the other one was going to swoop in and take it, they would just destroy everything they couldn't take.
Yes.
So that the other one couldn't get it. So God knows what they ended up destroying so that the other one couldn't get it. But then when it really came to a head, though, was Marsh then got in with the government because he obviously had better connections because of Daddy Warbucks, Daddy Peabody. And so he ended up getting in with the feds and getting a government job. And finally, the good thing, I suppose, with that is getting paleontology recognized by the federal government. But what he did then, and at this point, too, their obsessions had driven them, in pretty bad places. Cope at this point was divorced. His wife had left him. He had no money. He was living in a small apartment. And all he had left were his fossils, right, at this point in his career. It's later in his career. And Marsh tried to basically, not through him, but through one of the secretaries with the president, take his fossils because he claimed he used federal funding to get them. And he knew that all Cope had left to his name was these fossils. And Marsh was like, screw you, I'm going to take them because I have the government on my side. So he tries to seize them. Cope, of course, because not only did he keep detailed notes of Marsh's mistakes, but he also kept detailed notes of his funding. Turns out he spent almost all of his own money to buy them and to fund these expeditions. Millions of dollars in today's money, which he didn't have, which is why he was broke. So luckily, he managed to keep most of them. And to retaliate, he sent a very detailed, basically wrote a detailed essay, essentially explaining, like, how horrible Marsh is to the New York Herald, who then was like, wait, it sort of backfired because the writer was like, I know, I'm going to turn this on both of them. And the headline was, Scientists Wage Bitter Warfare. And it set off this 2-week public battle. Because then, of course, Marsh wrote back and he was like, this isn't true. And the two of them had this very public hissy fit fight about each other. And then it ended up ruining both of their careers because the publicity was so bad that Marsh ended up losing his job. The feds ended up pulling all their funding for paleontology. And they both ended up dying within a couple years of each other, essentially broke and discredited. In a lot of ways, which is really sad.
Yeah.
They let their obsessions sort of completely cloud their careers.
I mean, look,
And they died young, too. They weren't that old. One was 56, one was 67. Like, they weren't, like, old men. And they both died penniless alone and with not much around them except for a bunch of fossils.
I mean, we can take notes from that, like, in paleontology now. So because of that, mainly, it's like, we all work together. There's many different museums that like we share the same lands. Like we all know the story of how these two bitter rivals basically like threw each other under the bus until they died.
Yeah, truly. It was like, first it was trying to one-up each other on discoveries, and then it became one-upping each other and ruining their lives.
Yeah.
Like, it's really sad, actually, because they're two such brilliant men, and you're right, if only they had teamed up what they could have done.
Yeah, they could have teamed up, they could have divided and conquered, but I blame testosterone. I feel like...
1,000%.
Like, women would
one was an
never.
angry potato and the other one was jealous. Like, it's a really sad story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one he died, Marsh, who, again, he had so much, he had all the money, he had the connections, he died with $186 in his bank account. Because
Yeah.
at least, like, Cope ended up selling off a lot of his fossils to a private investor.
Yeah.
And Marsh, at least when he died, though, the bulk of his went to the Peabody Museum at Yale, because obviously his uncle paid for it.
Yes.
So at least, like, a lot of his collection was saved.
And major shout out to the Yale Peabody Museum, who just underwent like the most fabulous renovation.
Ooh,
So they
cool.
renovated their entire fossil gallery, and they actually remounted his original Brontosaurus skeleton.
I also learned I have a personal connection with Marsh a little bit. The first time that he really blew up in the media, because apparently he was really great at using the media in general. Like, he would have killed in this day and age on social media. He'd be the biggest dinosaur influencer. But his first time that he really became like a dino influencer of his time was because of Syracuse, New York, where I'm from. He was the first one to become sort of a celebrity in the field. And they thought they discovered a giant in Onondaga County called the Onondaga Giant, which is where I'm from. And he was the one that went up and debunked it as a hoax. He was like, no, this isn't real. This wasn't a real thing. And it became like headline news everywhere. And that's how he first got his name out there.
That's cool. Was it a faked skeleton or something? What was it?
Yeah, so it was an enormous petrified man had been dug up on a farm. And Marsh spotted the hoax. Clear tool marks in crevices on the block of gypsum. So he had just been carved and then put in the ground and then dug
Wait, is
back
this
up.
also known as the Cardiff Giant?
No, the Cardiff Giant is in Cardiff. That's in the UK.
UK.
Okay.
Yeah,
Huh.
that's a different one. This was clearly like somebody made a big like stone man and then stuck him underground and then dug him up. And Marsh was the one that was like, that looks like a chisel. I'm pretty sure this was
like a nut.
carved. But it was headline news and he became the cool hot paleontologist.
That's awesome.
Ironically, he was not the hot one of the two.
No.
But
Oh, that's Cope.
he was that was definitely a Cope. So anyway,
Cope has
that's the
receipts.
story of the original, the OG Bone War guys. And you're right, it is pure testosterone and appropriately called Bone Wars because it does sound like it was just like a giant pissing contest between the two of them. If they were standing at urinals, it probably started at urinals. They were standing at two urinals. They got on all well until they were New Jersey peeing and then they glanced over and then it was just like done from there.
So I love the story about the newspaper, how Cope tried to go get all of them and tried to burn them. And thank God social media wasn't around at the time because it spread so much faster. And, my God. But, what I was going to say is Mary Anning, who is, basically the first recognized paleontologist, was in England, and she was born in 1799 and she died in 1847. So had they paid attention to what was happening in England, they would have learned more about what plesiosaurs looked like because she was actually the first person to find plesiosaurs. And again, that's the one that they put the head on the butt. So, I mean, long story short, just like listen to women. I don't know.
There we go. There's the moral of that
cheers
story.
to that.
All right, well, the time has come as to which one of us you would choose as a winner, whatever that means to you.
Oh, man. You guys, you both did such an amazing job. I mean, Ryan's dealing with like renovations behind him. So
Yeah.
A+ for being like sort of, in chaos over there. But I feel like Michael's the winner on this one.
Cheers,
Is it
Michael.
because we bonded over cemeteries?
It doesn't hurt, but no, but your narrative of the whole thing was very good. It was very
thank
good.
you.
Very thorough, and I like the what do you call it? Comparison to Alphaba and Glenn.
If only these two came together at the end. I wonder if they had their moment. If you know Wicked the musical, they come back together at the very end of the show and sing that song like,
Man.
I have been changed for good.
I think we
and
should
I really
redo
hope
it.
that happened for them. That
We
like before
should.
they died, broken penniless, they had a moment where they were like, you know what?
Maybe in the
Should be friends.
afterlife they've made up and they're bone hunting in the sky
I
somewhere.
hope so. All right. Well, thank you. And what is our topic for next week?
So this was fabulous. So you guys did a great job on both Stan and Sue, one of the most controversial topics in paleontology, and for the Bone Wars, which is the most famous, I think, sort of part of paleontology history. But as a spooky girly, my next topic for you guys is ghosts.
Ooh,
great.
Totally random. I was into doing this, but I talked about quantum sciences and quantum like realms, and the fact that it's not a fact, but there is good papers on it around the fact that consciousness is potentially actually a quantum behavior. And if you start to think about the fact that there's a layering of realities, that you start to get into what could be an explanation for ghosts, which I think is interesting. I don't know. I don't know if I'll focus on that, but that's it's a fun nerd out on it.
No, it's super cool. And I'm of the mind where we are still learning about the world like you, and we're trying to pin down these things that people are for real experiencing. Mm-hmm. Like, there are people who swear up and down, this happened to them, and you can't decredit that many people. So it's like, what is really going on?
I love that. Oh, I'm so excited.
It's going to be
fun. This is great. All right. Well, thank you so much,
another
Ashley.
reason to go to the cemetery.
Yes. And remind people where they can follow you and where they can buy your books. Your books look lovely.
Thank you. Yeah. So I have 3 books. I have my first one, which is Fossils for Kids. My second one, which I wrote with my husband, called Gems for Kids. And then my third one is Prehistoric Worlds from DK. And they famously did eyewitness books. Do you remember eyewitness books? They were like the big books with like lots of pictures. Mm-hmm. So I grew up on those, so I was super excited to be published by them. But you can buy them wherever books are sold. Try to support local bookshops, but of course they're available on many online retailers. People can follow me, so I have social media presence as well, where I post pictures and things about both my life and paleontology. You get a lot of cats in there too. You can follow me on Instagram at Lady Naturalist. It's at Lady_Naturalist. And then on Blue Sky at Lady Naturalist, and X is at Lady Naturalist. So
awesome.
Yeah. So if you like dinosaurs and all things paleontology, give me a follow. And it's been a pleasure meeting you guys, and I hope we can keep in touch.
You too. And I hope people come visit you and Sue while she's there.
Yeah. Visit Sue the T-Rex at Museum of the Rockies, and it'll be here through September.